Hey, everybody. Welcome into episode 14 of Awakening the Ordinary. My name is Daniel Clower, and boy, oh boy, have I got some news for you. In this week's episode, we are going to be reviewing one of our favorite topics that we've talked about on this channel, which is Mr. Kilmar Abrego Garcia and the fact that he's actually been returned to the United States. We'll be diving into details on exactly why he's here and what charges he's now facing. Next, I'm going to be talking about the big, beautiful bill and some of the interesting, inflammatory, deceitful, and disturbing comments that various lawmakers have made regarding this big, boisterous bill. Then, finally, at the end of the episode, we're going to be diving into some executive orders that the Trump administration has recently passed, some bantering back and forth between the governor of California and the president of the United States, and threats that they've been sending each other's way. And finally, we're going to be taking a deeper look into this protest that's been going on in LA, how the National Guard has been called in, and how U.S. Marines could be deployed at any moment. We're going to be talking about what that means for the First Amendment in the United States and if you should be concerned. I want to get one of the absolute juiciest stories of the week out of the way. Elon Musk and Donald Trump have had quite the messy divorce, and they took it public on Twitter. And I gotta talk about it. So, without further ado, I want to take you into this Twitter feud that was brewing this week between the President of the United States and the richest man in the world. This whole situation started initially when Elon Musk was somewhat unceremoniously kicked out of Doge. I mean, it was relatively amicable. I mean, there was no, don't let the door hit you on the way out or anything like that, but everybody could tell that tensions were brewing. And tensions absolutely boiled over starting on June 3rd, when Elon Musk tweeted out, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it." So, first of all, yes, in a shocking turn of events, Elon Musk is the hero of our story this week. Thank you, Elon Musk, for finally choosing to speak out against the Trump administration. We've been waiting for it for a while, and I'm glad you finally came to your senses somewhat. I actually have to take a little bit of umbrage with your tweet here because I know it kind of sounds like it's nitpicking, but you said this is a pork-filled bill. And I just want to be clear, that's not the issue with this bill. It's not that it's pork-filled. And when Musk says pork-filled, that's a term that's commonly used when talking about these congressional spending bills, where congressional members will basically add in little projects or little money sinks, money pits that favor their particular district or their particular state. And they just kind of sneak it into a larger bill just to sort of grease the wheels a little bit and make their people happy. Maybe it'll be extra funding for a museum or, funding for some kind of meaningless research that has almost no importance or, that sort of thing, where they're basically just kind of trying to sneak in a million here, a million there. And after a while, that starts to add up. Well, that's not the issue with this bill. This bill is not filled with random, bits of pork from different congressional members. The big issue with this bill, the reason it's so bloated and the reason it's going to absolutely blow up our deficit is because it's a tax cut for the absolute wealthiest in our country. And surprise, surprise, Elon Musk doesn't want to say that part out loud. So, okay, he can call it pork filled. That's his words for it. That's fine. I guess I'm glad at least we're kind of on the same side here. So, yes, June 3rd, he tweeted that out. Now, June 4th at 2:07 a.m., he tweeted out, "It more than defeats all the cost savings achieved by the Doge team at great personal cost and risk." So that kind of paints a bit of a picture on why he is claiming to be mad about this bill. He's saying that essentially he lost a great deal of wealth, both personally because he donated hundreds of millions of dollars to these Republican candidates or movements, and also professionally. Tesla has taken quite a big hit since this whole, you know, feud has started, but they did all of this work. They got a whole bunch of haters. People don't like Elon Musk anymore. And it's all in the name of cutting costs and, getting rid of excess spending. And in exchange, this big, beautiful bill is going to be passed that's going to more than wipe out all of the savings that he purportedly has achieved. So I think he's claimed to have saved like $160 billion. We talked about how that's probably a pretty inflated number and not entirely accurate, but either way, this bill is going to increase the deficit by, trillions. So that 160 billion is really not even a drop in the bucket compared to how much we're going to be increasing the deficit. And supposedly that's what Elon Musk is mad about. He then continued on June 5th to tweet that the majority of Republican voters want the budget bill trimmed down. He retweeted somebody else tweeting that and just added, yes. So he's saying that the people are on his side. Everybody wants to have this bill cut down. And then he started throwing politicians' words back at them. And I think this is where the feud kind of got personal. I think if he had just tweeted about the bill and talked about how he wasn't in support of it and mentioned that, it was bloated or whatever, it would have just kind of passed by. It might have been a question for Caroline Levitt and she would have blown it off, and that's that. But this is where it got personal because Elon Musk retweeted an old tweet by Donald Trump that said, "I cannot believe the Republicans are extending the debt ceiling. I am a Republican and I am embarrassed." Elon Musk retweeted that and said, "Wise words." Then a little later on, he proceeded to retweet another old tweet by Donald Trump where he said, "No member of Congress should be eligible for re-election if our country's budget is not balanced. Deficits not allowed." And Elon Musk retweeted that saying, "I couldn't agree more. American flag, American flag." So that I believe that's really where it got personal, because if there's one thing that politicians and hypocrites in general hate, it's when you throw their own words back at them. So at about noon, Trump was in a conference and was asked about this brewing feud with Elon Musk. And he said he was very disappointed in Elon Musk. He said, "Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore." That's when things started to get spicy on Trump's end of things. But later on, we're going to see that that's not where it stopped. Regardless, there were rumors at this point circulating that the reason Elon Musk was getting mad about this bill was because it was cutting out electric vehicle incentives. Basically, extra tax cuts that were going to people who purchased electric vehicles, and that was going to, hurt Musk financially because it was going to make people buy Teslas less. So there were rumors that that's why he was actually mad about the bill. Then Elon Musk tweeted out, "Keep the electric vehicle / solar incentive cuts in the bill, even though no oil and gas subsidies are touched. Very unfair. But ditch the mountain of disgusting pork in the bill. In the entire history of civilization, there has never been legislation that is both big and beautiful." Then a couple of minutes later, he tweeted out disputing the claim that Elon Musk had actually reviewed the bill and given it the green light before, saying, "False. This bill was never shown to me even once and was passed in the dead of night so fast that almost no one in Congress could even read it." Remember that comment, dear viewer, because we're actually going to be taking a look at one particular congresswoman who did not read the bill before she passed it, but I'll let that sit for now. And by the way, kind of during this whole process, I'm not including every single tweet because there are seriously a lot of them, but he was kind of going back and posting other quotes from other representatives, kind of throwing in their face where they talked about how you should reduce the budget or reduce the deficit and yada, yada, yada. So just to, kind of keep you in the loop there. But then later on in the day, little before 1 o'clock, he tweeted this out. And this was, I think, where it truly got personal for the first time. Without me, Trump would have lost the election. Dems would control the House and Republicans would be 51-49 in the Senate. Such ingratitude. If you know anything about narcissists, if you know anything about prideful men, they absolutely hate it if you try and take any credit whatsoever for their achievements. So I said before that I thought it kind of got personal when Musk was first throwing Donald Trump's own words back at him. But if I had to guess where it really got Trump to the point where he got so mad he was going to start making some of the threats that he was making later, I think this is where it really hit him. Because if you guys remember, Elon Musk donated $250 million to Donald Trump's campaign fund during the election. I mean, the dude basically in the past few elections, that would have been like well over half of the entire budget for the entire campaign that Elon Musk bankrolled. And at the time, I know there were a lot of concerns about, does this mean we're going to have President Musk instead of President Trump? And to some extent, it kind of seemed like it was going to go that way for the first few months. But obviously, as we have all learned, Donald Trump doesn't really care if you do him a favor. He's really more of a what have you done for me lately kind of guy. So $250 million back during election season, that was a lifetime ago. Forget about it. What have you done for me lately? And lately we all saw that Trump's approval rating was tanking. And that was in large part due to Mr. Elon Musk and his Doge team being, frankly, absolute morons. But regardless, don't forget, Musk is the good guy in this story, okay? Then Elon Musk tweeted out a video from when he was doing a Tesla show in front of the White House a little earlier this year, where Trump was saying, it's all computer, and, talking about how much he wanted to buy a Tesla.
That's beautiful. This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's computer. That's beautiful. Wow.
And one of the things that Trump mentioned in that meeting was how Elon Musk was such a great guy because he's never asked for anything whatsoever, and how he was totally fine with this electric vehicle tax break being cut and never complained about it at all. Fast forward a couple of hours and Elon Musk tweeted out something that was kind of a little ominous, actually, a little terrifying to think about. But he said, oh, and some food for thought as they ponder this question. Trump has 3.5 years left as president, but I will be around for 40 plus years. Which, first of all, man, that's not a happy thought to think about. But second of all, basically what he was saying there is that senators, congressmen, they really needed to kind of watch their backs because, yes, Trump has been kind of blustering about how if anybody doesn't follow the party line, he's going to try and get them primaried out. But keep in mind that he's only going to be the president for about 3.5 years, and then he's going to have essentially no more power anymore, basically. Whereas Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, is going to be around for quite a long time. And Elon Musk has also threatened to be active in the primary campaigns for anybody who goes against his own agenda. Then he went back to throwing these people's words back in their face and retweeted an old tweet from Mike Johnson, who is the current Speaker of the House, so like the head Republican in the House, saying that the federal debt has just topped $31.4 trillion, and the Congressional Budget Office now estimates federal spending for the fiscal year 2023 will yada, 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 basically throwing his words back in his face about how spending was out of control, and that was just a couple of years ago. So Elon Musk said, where's the Mike Johnson of 2023? This is when Donald Trump kind of stepped into the fray. 2:37 p.m., he logged onto Twitter, I guess, and he decided to start firing shots back. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more. Well, I'm really disappointed in Elon. No, he started he started swinging. So first, he just said that Elon was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do, and he just went crazy. He truthed out another tweet that the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. Okay, here I want to pause. I want to kind of dive a little deeper into both of those tweets. So, first of all, I have to say, I do actually believe that Elon Musk is not mad about this EV mandate being taken away. Because as he posted a few times, as he retweeted a few times, he knew this was coming for a long time. And actually, Trump had basically bragged about how great of a guy Elon Musk was because he wasn't throwing a fit about it, because he didn't ask him to undo that. He knew that was coming. Now, I am personally, frankly, very surprised about that because I know one of the only things that kept Tesla profitable in the recent past is the fact that they had these electric vehicle tax credits. Otherwise, they would have been in the hole. So I am pretty shocked that Elon Musk wasn't throwing a huge fit about it, but I actually do believe he wasn't. So I don't really buy the whole we took away the mandate and then he flipped his lid thing. I mean, it just doesn't make much sense. So then we get to Trump saying that basically he thinks they should potentially just cut out all of those government contracts and subsidies that they had set aside for Tesla. And this is where I feel like he kind of said the quiet part out loud. So he said that he was surprised Biden didn't do this before. And he's kind of implying that it would be an easy way to cut the budget now. And if that's something they want to do, cut the budget, then I guess I'm wondering why they haven't done that. And to me, I think it's pretty clear. I think this whole, Elon Musk funding $250 million worth of campaign funds to the Trump campaign was essentially a quid pro quo. In exchange for Elon Musk giving all of this money to Trump and ensuring that he was elected, Elon Musk was going to be given a, prominent political position, which was being the head of Doge, which didn't work out, and was also going to be gifted some very lucrative contracts and ensure that some of his other lucrative contracts didn't get hacked away when Doge was doging things. It just seems slimy, and it seems like Trump almost kind of overspoke. He kind of overshared because I don't really see an excuse for why they wouldn't have already cut those subsidies and contracts out if they really were focused on trying to save money. I mean, I remember, I think I talked about how there was a contract given to refit the entire ambassadorial carpool in some kind of third worldish country with electric vehicles, which really didn't make any sense because that country wasn't really equipped to handle electric vehicles. You need charging stations and stuff set up. And I remember that was a very expensive contract. At the time, I thought it was very fishy because Elon Musk was in Donald Trump's good graces and the contract didn't make any sense whatsoever. So again, it seems like he's kind of saying the quiet part out loud here. I think if you look just a little bit past the subtext, you can see there's some stuff going on. The idea that somebody being mentioned in the Epstein files means they're immediately guilty is false. I mean, the Epstein files basically mentioned anybody that he did any business with at any time whatsoever, anybody that he ever rubbed shoulders with. So there are going to be a lot of people in the Epstein files who didn't really do anything. I mean, I think Stephen Hawking was in the Epstein files. So, and we already knew that Donald Trump was in the Epstein files. I mean, he was mentioned. They have been associates before. That's not a big secret. So The fact that Elon Musk is tweeting out the reason they have not been made public is because he's in the files means that he ain't talking about just being in the files. And I'm just mentioning that now because I feel like I can just sense it coming. That's going to be a big MAGA talking point. They're going to say, oh, well, anybody's in the files, yada, yada, yada. No, that is not what Elon Musk was implying here. It is very clear what he was implying, that Donald Trump was up to some incredibly unsavory, illegal activity with either minors or other people that were under duress or, not in control of their own fate somehow. So, yeah, that's a massive accusation to make. I guess it just begs the question, why were you working with him? I mean, I think a couple of months ago, Elon Musk was talking about how he loves Donald Trump as much as one straight man can love another straight man, which little sus. But second of all, why? Why would you want to be close associates with somebody who is, to your knowledge, doing some really, really heinous, horrible, evil things? So again, I just feel like these guys got so heated that they started telling on themselves. They started screaming out these accusations that really kind of revealed a lot about their own, stances. Elon Musk, dude, why would you work with somebody who was in the Epstein files, who was up to really, really horrible stuff? And not only work with him, but make sure he was elected president of the United States and talk about how much you love him and you want to kiss his big old orange booty and how everything he does is great and you're in total lockstep with him. And only now, when he wants to pass this, yes, obviously stupid and horrible, big, beautiful bill, you speak out about it. But why didn't you speak out before? Why didn't you speak out the second you found out about this? I mean, you should have been going and testifying in front of Congress, talking about how this guy needed to be impeached. We'll get to that later. What were you up to? I mean, seriously. Like, that's not a normal thing to say. It's you don't just drop a bomb saying your bestie, did some really horrific, evil, terrible things. You're telling on yourself. At that point, Kanye West decided to weigh in. And he said, Rose, please, no, hug emoji. We love you both so much. Which, I don't know how much you guys have been following the Kanye news lately. I'm not really going to go into it, but I will say that if Kanye West is saying he loves you so much, that's probably not a great sign, and maybe you're not the best guy. I wanted to include this next tweet because I thought it was really funny. Mike Johnson responded to Elon Musk tagging him before. Remember when he said, where's the Mike Johnson of 2023? Mike Johnson said, the Mike Johnson of 2023 is the same Mike Johnson who has always been a lifelong fiscal hawk, who now serves as speaker and is implementing a multi-stage plan to get our country back to fiscal responsibility and extraordinary economic growth. It begins with the critically blah, 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 whatever. Okay. The funny thing is, of course, he got community noted. And I just thought that was just absolutely hilarious and classic, and of course deserved to be included because multiple nonpartisan groups have put out reports showing the reconciliation package will add over $2 trillion in debt and potentially over $3 trillion when you add increased debt payments, which, goes on to list all of the various organizations, including the CRFB, the Tax Foundation, and the CBO. We're going to get to Mike Johnson and other Republicans lying about this bill in a little bit, but I really just thought that was hilarious and should be included. So anyway, 4 o'clock rolls around and Donald Trump says, I don't mind Elon turning against me, but he should have done so months ago. This is one of the greatest bills ever presented to Congress. It's a record cut in expenses, $1.6 trillion, and the biggest tax cut ever given. If this bill doesn't pass, there will be a 68% tax increase. and things far worse than that. I didn't create this mess. I'm just here to fix it. This puts our country on a path of greatness. Make America great again. Okay. Why does he type like that? I haven't mentioned this in any episode, but what does that mean? Why does he communicate in that way? I used to I used to go around saying sad to my friends because he always used to type that in these tweets. He would type sad in all capital letters with an exclamation mark. He just, I don't know, he just capitalizes like weird words, entire words, or just the first letter in like random words. Record cut in expenses. Like, what does that mean? Okay, anyway, I don't know where he's getting this 68% tax increase number. I wanted to just mention that, like, that's not true. I really I don't even know exactly how to address it because it's just not true. I don't understand where that number is coming from. It's not the case. Taxes would go up for certain brackets by different amounts, but there's not a single bracket that would go up by 68%. That's ludicrous. That makes no sense whatsoever. So again, like, this guy just tweets these things, and I don't know where he gets the idea. I don't know if he believes what he's saying. I don't know if he can read, but he's coming up with these drastic, insane numbers that he just pulls out of thin air. I mean, we're going to talk about that a little more later too, but anyway, that's how he decided to clap back at Elon Musk, I guess. We are almost done with this tweet war, by the way. I don't want you to think the whole episode is going over this. I know it's the juicy drama of the week, so I figured I should just go ahead and get this out of the way first. After that tweet, Elon Musk threatened to decommission the Dragon spacecraft. He said, "In light of the president's statement about cancellation of my government contracts, at SpaceX will begin decommissioning its Dragon spacecraft immediately." And that's the spacecraft that they used to return, like NASA individuals from the ISS back to Earth. A couple of minutes later, he then retweeted user agreeing that Donald Trump should be impeached, which again is like a big time escalation. Donald Trump has been saying like, Elon Musk is a greedy butthole and we don't like him. And Elon Musk is saying, Donald Trump is a pedophile and we need to impeach him. And then he tweeted out this interesting claim, which astute viewers may have heard before, that the Trump tariffs will cause a recession in the second half of this year. Which, yeah, that's coming very soon. Then he tweeted out a video showing Donald Trump at a party with Epstein and included a raised eyebrow emoji, like, what's going on here? At that point, later on in the evening, Caroline Leavitt was holding a press conference and was asked about Elon Musk claiming that Donald Trump was in the Epstein files. And she said that it was an unfortunate episode from Elon, who is unhappy with the one big beautiful bill because it does not include the policies he wanted. The president is focused on passing this historic piece of legislation and making our country great again. Okay, so 5 hours after Elon Musk said that they were going to decommission the Dragon program, a random user named Alaska that had, literally like 100 followers at the time of this tweet, said, "This is a shame, this back and forth. You both are better than this. Cool off and take a step back for a couple of days." And Elon Musk said, "Okay, good advice. We won't decommission Dragon." So I don't was that the first person to tell him maybe you shouldn't do this? I'm just wondering. It was 5 hours later, and again, just a random person. It wasn't like a celebrity. It wasn't a political advisor or anything like that. It was literally a random nobody tweeted at Elon Musk saying, "Hey, cool, Ed," and he said, "Okay, yeah, good point." So that's pretty much the end of this Elon Musk debacle. There is one more tweet that I have not been able to verify, but it has been floating around and has since either been deleted or was faked to begin with. I just thought I might as well go ahead and mention it because it's really, really funny. Stephen Miller tweeted that we need to take America back, and Elon Musk replied to that saying, just like I took your wife. That was on June 8th at about noon. Again, I don't know if that's a real tweet or not. They asked Grok about it. Grok is the AI on Twitter. So Twitter's own AI was asked if that was a real tweet or not. And this was Grok's response. The post from Elon Musk likely existed and was deleted. A screenshot shared on X shows Musk replying to Stephen Miller's post with, just like I took your wife, on June 8th, 2025 at 12:02 p.m., referencing Musk hiring Miller's wife, Katie, as reported in late May 2025. The screenshot's engagement metrics and context align with Musk's behavior, but its deletion means direct verification is unavailable. While a fabricated screenshot is possible, the evidence leans toward the post being real but removed, consistent with Musk's pattern of deleting controversial posts. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. Maybe Elon Musk should be more careful about tweeting controversial things and then deleting them because it's impossible to verify whether or not they were actually tweeted. That is the end, thank goodness, of the Twitter saga. I don't want to talk about it anymore. It has taken way too much of this episode because my verdict for all of this is that basically it is a complete nothing burger. It does not matter. And it is essentially being used to distract you guys from what is actually seriously, importantly going on in this country. So all of that being said, as amusing as all of that was, as wild and crazy as all of that was, that the richest man in the world is accusing the president of the United States of, hopping on the Lolita Express, it probably doesn't matter. It probably doesn't. Because if the FBI had access to information that said that Donald Trump was complicit in some of Jeffrey Epstein's behaviors or whatever, they probably would have acted on it before, probably, if they were going to act on it at all. At this point, either Donald Trump and a whole bunch of other, important, powerful people are actually implicated in the files, and nothing's going to happen to them because they're too important and powerful and rich, or they're not, and nothing's going to happen to them because they're not implicated. So at the end of the day, it's still nothing going to happen. So it doesn't really matter at all. Musk saying that he was going to decommission Dragon and then going back on it means that doesn't matter at all. Elon Musk briefly talked about like forming a new third party that represented 80% of Americans. That's never going to happen. We are trapped in this two-party hellscape forever. So it really was basically just a big nothing burger. It was important to cover because it's culturally relevant. You're going to be hearing a lot about it, and I wanted you to think a little deeper than just whatever the tweet was posted. But at the end of the day, I really don't think it revealed anything or was important in any way other than maybe just showing that these guys kind of tell on themselves with some of their really heinous, horrible behavior. Okay. All that being said, let's please dive into the real news. I mentioned at the top of this episode that Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been returned to the United States. That is correct. He has been returned and he has been indicted and charged with human trafficking. Essentially, the charges state that Kilmar Abrego Garcia, along with an accomplice, were driving in Tennessee when they were initially stopped back in 2022. That's where his initial criminal record even came from to begin with, that got this whole mess started. And evidently in that vehicle, there were 9 other Hispanic men who didn't have identification. And so the charges are that basically he was facilitating moving people who were here illegally between borders. Now, they actually specifically have said that he was a member of MS-13 and he was transporting narcotics to Maryland in relation with gang crimes. But they have only actually charged him specifically with moving people. So they are in some ways kind of slandering him by saying that there are all these extraneous, like, he was muling drugs around and he's working for MS-13 and yada yada yada. But at the end of the day, the only thing they are actually charging him with is giving a ride to a bunch of people who are here illegally. First of all, I just want to kind of mention that this whole Kilmar Abrego Garcia being returned to the United States really is contrary to what Donald Trump and every single person in his administration was saying was even possible. They were saying that they couldn't possibly return him. It wasn't their call. He was in a foreign country, and so they couldn't do anything about it. It was entirely up to Bukele. Bukele was saying that he couldn't do it because it would be like releasing a terrorist. And essentially, what this all boils down to is Trump always chickens out. Trump said there was absolutely no way Kilmar was coming back home, and guess what? Kilmar came back home. And so now they have these charges against him. And I just want to, I guess, state for the record again, I don't know this guy. I don't know if Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a member of MS-13, although I highly suspect he's not because the evidence doesn't seem to bear that out. I don't know if he was trafficking drugs or trafficking people or anything like that. I will say, I don't think it's frankly that big of a deal if he was giving a ride to people who were here illegally. They were already here. It's not like he, toted them across the border. He was giving them a ride from what they're saying is from Texas to Maryland. Big whoop. I mean, they could have taken a bus. Like, that's not really a big deal. And he already had to go spend some time in a notorious gang prison in El Salvador. So, maybe give him time served. But regardless, I don't know. He could come out as guilty. To me, that's fine. I was never saying that Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a hero and a champion and the best guy in the world. The only thing that I and everybody else that I knew was saying was that he deserved his day in court. And that's what he's getting now. So to all the MAGA people saying he would just be immediately deported if he was ever returned, and oh, he's never coming back anyway, he's gonna go rot in prison or whatever, like, hey, hats off. Like, I really hope that this makes you do some kind of introspection. In some ways, I sincerely doubt it, and I think that's a big shame, but I hope that it makes you reconsider. You fell for fake news. You fell for the lies, hook, line, and sinker. They said they couldn't get him back. They obviously could, and they did. And so now he's being charged with these, frankly, kind of meaningless crimes. And by the way, I'm not the only person saying that. So now he's been brought here. He's charged with these, frankly, kind of like meaningless crimes. And by the way, I am not the only person saying that. The head of the Department of Justice in Tennessee actually resigned because he said that Kilmar being charged with this was entirely political, and he did not agree with pressing these charges and trying to take him to court over it. Whatever. He's getting his day in court. That's all we ever really wanted. We just wanted due process. And this entire time, the Trump administration has been dragging their feet, saying it couldn't happen, lying about what their responsibility was, lying about, what their ability to do it was, lying about what the Supreme Court ruling actually said, just lying up and down. And then finally, when their backs are against the wall because they are about to be held in contempt of court if they don't do something to get him back, they bring him back and they, take him in on these trumped up charges. Well, whatever. I'm not happy that he's going to court over these meaningless charges while they are accusing him of other things, but not actually charging him with it because they don't have the evidence for it. So they're basically, again, just slandering this guy. But I am happy that he's returned to the US, and I'm happy that he's getting his day in court. We'll see how it goes. If he turns out to be innocent, all the better. That's great. If he turns out to be guilty, I hope they're lenient with his sentencing, truly, because he and his family have already been through hell. They have been dragged through the mud by this administration in a cruel and unusual way. So hopefully there will be a happy ending to this Kilmar Abrego Garcia story, and hopefully it is only the first of many, many to come, because reports are that he's not nearly the only one that was sent illegally or without cause. Apparently, over 50 of these Venezuelan men were sent to El Salvador and were here entirely legally, meaning maybe they were not citizens, but they had applied for asylum and were, on hold waiting for their case to go through. I hope this is a sign of good things to come. And in a sea of terrible, depressing, horrible news, this is actually something that I think we can finally, hopefully celebrate. Okay. Next up, because it's been way too long since I've bashed Democrats, I wanted to talk about a story that's been developing lately where uh, in several states that have a clear Republican majority, that are as ruby red as they come, Democrats are debating running as independent instead. Because the idea is that voters are basically uninformed and have no idea who they're actually supporting, and essentially just look at the letter next to people's names to decide if they want to vote for them or not. And they think that if there's a D next to their name, they're an absolute no-go. But if there's an I next to their name, maybe they've got a shot. I think this is in some ways telling, because I think that in some ways, this is Democrats kind of coming to terms with the fact that right now, the Democratic brand is just completely odious. Democrats are at their lowest approval rating in my lifetime. Nobody wants to be associated with a party. There are books coming out with alarming frequency talking about the Biden cover up and how complicit many Democratic lawmakers and bigwigs were in hiding Biden's declining cognitive state. Not to mention, this whole Trump presidency, the Democratic Party has seemed exceedingly feckless, completely unable to accomplish any kind of pushback whatsoever. And then, even when you do have brand name Democrats standing up in some kind of meaningful ways to the Trump administration, like Cory Booker, for example, he had that pretty astounding filibuster that, I mean, it was inspirational, truly. But then he went and turned around and confirmed Jared Kushner's dad as an ambassador. He voted to confirm him essentially because Charles Kushner has donated a bunch of money to him. It's this clear odor around the Democratic Party as a whole that, first of all, they are weak. Second of all, they are incompetent. Third of all, they are just liars. They are constantly covering things up or virtue signaling or kind of doing this self-gratifying pontificating about the evils of corruption and then turning around and being corrupt. I don't think it's necessarily a terrible plan for Democrats to say, we can't possibly win as Democrats, so we're going to run as independents. But I do hope it doesn't stop there. I hope they don't say, okay, well, we'll run as independents in these states where we're probably not going to win anyway, and then we're just going to be business as usual everywhere else. Democrats deeply, deeply need to undergo a renewal, a resurrection of sorts. They need to become like the Phoenix and be rebirthed into a new movement. And I haven't talked a ton about this before, but the new DNC chair actually was talking about how he's going to try primarying out older Democrat members in safe states with new blood, with young, exciting members. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is rumored to be trying to upend Chuck Schumer as a senator in New York. So I think there are promising signs in that the Democratic Party is looking to go in a new direction. I just hope that new direction isn't an even worse one. I have, I think, made my disdain clear for identity politics in the past. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Democrats are the only ones who do it. And I think I will likely be talking about that at length in a future episode. But Democrats are the most known for it, at least right now, because of some of the choices they make in regards to these sort of fringe social issues. My hope as a moderate and as a relatively conservative person is that they will learn appropriate lessons from everything that's happened. They'll understand that maybe being honest and truthful and sharing difficult truths rather than easy lies and rooting out corruption and eschewing identity politics is a good path forward for them. And maybe they will be able to fight back against this horrific Trump administration by doing so. My sincere hope, truly, and again, this is coming from a moderate conservative, is that there is a massive blue wave in the 2026 midterms. I hope that sincerely. I will be doing my best in my little corner of the world to make sure that happens here. And I hope you guys can as well. But for that to happen, Democrats need to understand a better lesson than just being a Democrat is really unpopular right now. They need to understand why. What happened to get you to this point? Why are things the way that they are now? Do some deep, serious introspection. It seemed right after the 2024 election that you guys were doing it. It really seemed like you were taking a look inwards and trying to figure out what happened, how everything fell apart. And I sincerely worry that some of you learned the wrong lesson. I have heard too many people say that the lesson to be learned is that they can never elect a woman or a woman of color. That wasn't the point. That wasn't the point of any of this. I just wanted to share that little bit of news because I thought it was, in some ways, really encouraging. And in other ways, made me kind of worry that Democrats are missing the point right now. It's not about the D next to your name. It's not about thinking that voters are so stupid that they're going to fall for you changing to be an independent when you're actually a Democrat. I don't think anybody thinks that Bernie Sanders is like a truly moderate independent. I think everybody understands that the only reason he's listed as an independent is because he's actually more left of Democrats on a lot of issues. I just wanted to share that. I thought it was an interesting bit of news, and I think we've been weighed down by a lot of heavy stuff lately. So if you've got any thoughts on political strategy, if you've got any thoughts on kind of the direction that you hope Democrats take in the 2026 midterms, in the 2028 elections, I'd love to hear it. I am fascinated by this stuff. That's a big part of why I do what I do, because I love it, because I'm obsessed with it. So if you guys have any takes on strategies, any ideas about the rebranding of the Democratic Party, let me know. I'd love to hear it. And I'd love to hear your predictions on where you think we're going to be during the 2026 midterms, during the 2028 elections. I mean, I know obviously things move at a lightning pace. Even a week can change entire narratives. But I'd like to hear your guesses. And I think maybe when we get a little closer to the midterms, we might even have our own little prediction episode where we share some of the more popular predictions that we find on our channel here. Next thing we need to dive into is this big, beautiful bill. And I know that was kind of a lot of what we were talking about with that whole tweet storm, but I want to dive more into the specifics in some of the ways that especially Republican lawmakers have been talking about this big, beautiful bill. For example, Mike Johnson. We brought him up earlier in the tweets and how he got community noted and pointed out that no, this is actually going to be adding to the deficit quite a bit. He has talked about this bill as if, first of all, nobody is going to be cut from Medicaid really, unless they just absolutely don't deserve to be on it, which we already dove into the numbers in a previous episode about how that's maybe 10% of people at most who are on Medicaid don't, deserve to be on it, meaning they're not either working or a caretaker or full-time student or something like that. So it's going to be a very, very small number of people. So he's talked about how nobody's going to be facing any cuts other than maybe those very, very small amounts of people. He has also talked about how the deficit is not going to be growing because of this bill. It's going to be shrinking. I don't know how those two mesh, I guess. So first of all, they're talking about how they're going to be making billions and billions in cuts. Part of those cuts are going to be to Medicaid, but nobody's going to be kicked off of Medicaid other than maybe a very small few people. So I guess my first question to Mike Johnson would be, where's the money coming from? If it's not going to be meaningfully impacting anybody on Medicaid, how is it going to be saving money? If that's the case, why didn't you do it before? Because if you can just make money appear out of thin air when it comes to Medicaid cuts without it affecting anybody, you should have done that a long time ago, right? And my other question is, if this is not going to be raising the deficit at all, why are you raising the debt ceiling? And just to kind of give you a very brief synopsis on that, essentially the deficit is how much money we owe, so how much debt our country has. And the debt ceiling is how much debt we are allowed to have. So right now we have like a $31 trillion deficit or whatever, and we're really close to the debt ceiling. So they need to raise the debt ceiling so that we can get into more debt, basically, because that's what they want to do. They want to keep getting us into more debt because of, spending on our defense budget and spending on Social Security and all that stuff. We spend a lot of money on stuff. We are going to be getting into more debt. So they are raising the debt ceiling. Except Mike Johnson is saying we're not going to be getting into more debt. We're actually going to be getting into less debt. The deficit is going to decrease. So if the deficit is going to decrease with this bill, why are you raising the debt ceiling by $5 trillion? That doesn't make any sense. Why is Donald Trump asking for the debt ceiling to be completely removed if he doesn't want to raise our deficit? If he doesn't want to get into more debt, why in the world would he want to remove the debt ceiling and make it so that we could be in unlimited debt? I mean, he knows other presidents are going to be coming after him, and he should assume that other presidents are going to do the normal presidential thing and just, completely spend way outside of our means and raise our debt even more. So if that's the case, why would you raise the debt ceiling? Why would you remove the debt ceiling? It just doesn't make any sense. And it's because the fact is they know it is going to raise our deficit. They know that. They are lying to you. So I don't care where you sit politically. I don't care if you are super red conservative, if you're a Republican. You have to understand these people are lying to your face. And okay, you say all politicians lie. You say Democrats lie too, or whatever. I'm not talking about whataboutism. What about these other politicians who lie? What about these other instances? I'm saying right now, in this instance, Mike Johnson and these other Republicans are showing you who they are. You need to listen. They are lying to you, and they know they are lying to you. They're not tricked about this. They're not confused about this. They wouldn't be raising the debt limit if they thought they were reducing our debt. It just wouldn't work that way. They wouldn't be saying that you're not going to experience, any issues with your Medicaid, and also saying that we are going to be cutting billions of dollars from Medicaid. Those do not intersect. They are lying to you, and they know they are lying to you, and they think you are too stupid to figure it out. And they think you are too dumb to remember this when midterms come around. And they think you are too weak and too feckless to do anything about it. They think they are safe. It is your job to tell them if they're right. Are you too stupid to know that they're lying to you? Are you too dumb to remember this when midterms come around? Are you too feckless and weak to do anything about it? You decide. Your voice matters. It matters. And it's going to matter more than it ever has come midterms 2026. So let that be my weekly call to action. If you care at all about this country, get out there and vote. Along with this whole situation of Mike Johnson is clearly and obviously lying. The other thing is, Republicans now find themselves in kind of an impossible situation because there are two segments of Republicans that do not want to support this bill right now. The bill is sitting in the Senate. They're discussing it. They're debating it. And they don't have enough votes right this second because there are two kind of opposite sections of Republicans that have come together to say, we are not voting on this. On the one hand, you have what I'll call the fiscal hawks, the people who are really freaked out about how much debt we are in. And I will be frank, I'm freaked out about it too. The interest payments alone on the amount of debt that we're in are more than our entire Department of Defense budget. We're paying more every year on our interest payments for the amount of debt that we're in than we're paying on the Department of Defense. That's a big deal. That's a bad thing. I guess you can say that's kind of the camp that I'm in too. I'm freaked out about the amount of debt that we're in. Now, there are arguments that it doesn't really matter. I have heard that because the dollar is essentially the global currency, it really doesn't matter if America is in a lot of debt, and it's all kind of meaningless numbers anyway. So deficit goes burr and nobody cares. But to me, I think it's a problem. Now, I don't think we should necessarily be cutting from Medicaid. I think we have a woefully bloated defense budget, which is rife with corruption, overpaying hundreds of times for even, small insignificant things like, buying nuts and bolts in quadruplicate and paying 100 times the cost because contractors are getting, sweetheart deals from various lawmakers. And I think that's a huge problem. And we need to do investigations and we need to figure out a way to balance our budget. But I don't think the answer is more cuts to Medicaid. And unfortunately, that's what these Republicans have said. Basically, we need to do even bigger cuts to Medicaid. We need to do even bigger cuts to social programs, to food stamps, to welfare, to all of these things that help poor people, basically. This fiscal hawk group of Republicans are saying we need to make more and more and more cuts. We have to get this budget balanced, and we will not pass a bill that is raising our deficit. And then you've got this other group of Republicans. The other group of Republicans that are voting no are the Republicans that are saying, hey, wait a second. You're doing some pretty extreme cuts to Medicaid, and a lot of my constituents use Medicaid. So I don't want you to do that. So you have to remove some of these Medicaid cuts, and then I'll vote for the bill. But the issue is, if you remove the Medicaid cuts, then that balloons the deficit even further. That means we will be going more and more into debt. So right now, you've got these two opposing groups who are on completely opposite sides. You've got this group saying, we need to make more and more cuts, and this group saying, you have to put back the Medicaid cuts and reverse them. But they're both agreeing we're not voting on this bill. And I'm not really sure how Republicans are going to fix that. I can think of one way to make both the fiscal hawks happy and also the Republicans who don't want Medicaid cuts happy. And it would probably bring in a lot of Democratic support as well. And that's to say, okay, we're going to undo those Medicaid cuts and we're going to put that back so that you're not cutting Medicaid, you're not kicking anybody off of Medicaid. And also, we're not giving these outrageous, enormous tax cuts to the ultra wealthy. Because as I mentioned before, when I was talking about Elon Musk saying that this is a pork-filled bill, which it's not, The issue is that they are offering these insane tax cuts to the ultra wealthy. That's the reason we are going into debt further. If you were taxing these ultra wealthy individuals at an appropriate rate, and maybe not just taxing their income, but also taxing them on the, total amount of assets that they have, we could get rid of our deficit too sweet. We could do it super quick. It wouldn't be that big of a problem. And we also wouldn't have to be making these really harmful cuts to Medicaid. I've mentioned I am moderate, and in some ways I'm more conservative, and in some ways I'm more liberal. But I do believe that everybody should pay their fair share. And when these ultra wealthy individuals could be taxed at a higher rate and suffer no meaningful changes to their lifestyle whatsoever, I think they probably should. I think that's their fair share. They made their enormous, insane, ungodly amounts of wealth on the backs of Americans like you and me. They wouldn't be this ultra wealthy tier of people if they did not live in America, if they did not exploit American workers. So to me, it makes sense that they pay a higher rate. Speaking of these incredibly harmful cuts to Medicaid, there was in some ways amusing and in some ways really, really, really frustrating story that happened where Joani Ernst was at a town hall meeting, and she is, by the way, a Republican congresswoman, and somebody shouted out that these Medicaid cuts are going to be lethal. People are going to die because of these Medicaid cuts. And her response very flippantly was, well, we're all going to die one day. Which, I mean, come on, man. How are you even a politician? Like, aren't politicians supposed to be like relatively good with their words, kind of quick on their feet, not saying really horrifically stupid things like, well, we're all going to die anyway? What kind of an argument is that? So she was kind of pressured to apologize for her statement, and this was her apology. I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize, and I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well. Oh, so funny. Joni, people, human beings in your district are actually going to die because of Medicaid cuts, and you are making a joke about it. So, first of all, just aside from the whole, like, what kind of political acumen do you have? That was the stupidest possible thing you could say. What kind of a heartless person are you? I mean, you're not even arguing that people aren't going to die from this. You're not even pretending that you don't think that people will be harmed because of this. You're just saying it doesn't matter. You're just saying you don't care because everybody's going to die at some point. That's horrible. That is truly soulless and heartless. And I don't think that you should be in a position of power where you are responsible for the livelihood of thousands or millions of people when you have such a flippant disregard for life. I kind of talked about this before, but Republicans are supposed to be the pro-life party. They're supposed to be the party of people who care about lives. So why in the world would you think it's okay to make a joke about people dying because of a bill that you are passing? You are putting your name on that. You are writing your name at the bottom of their gravestones. I did this. I think that's really, truly horrific. Genuinely. I think it's beyond disappointing. I think somebody who says something like that should be fired. And again, this goes back to the whole midterms and yada yada, but you have the power to fire her. Secondly, and I guess on a more amusing note, I guess I realized how frightening it is when you get politicians kind of giving you Zen quotes like, we're all going to die eventually. I mean, Donald Trump talking about, what are borders anyway? Canada should be a part of the United States. It would just look so beautiful. Okay, next up, we have Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is kind of a media darling, I guess you could say, because she, frankly, is one of the most horrific members of Congress that we have. So, astute viewers may recall that I discussed a portion of the bill that involved AI regulations and how this bill was going to be taking away the authority to regulate AI from states and giving it solely to the federal government. And I sort of ruminated on the fact that it was ironic, I guess, that Republicans, who are supposed to be the party of states' rights, were supporting this big, beautiful bill that was taking away states' rights. Well, I guess Marjorie Taylor Greene saw our episode and she tweeted out that she didn't realize that this AI portion of the bill was in it, which echoes back a little bit to what Elon Musk was tweeting out about how congressional members had to sign this bill in the middle of the night without ever reading it. But I also find it deeply, deeply disturbing because I knew about that in the bill. My viewers knew about that in the bill. Friends and associates that I've talked with, including friends and associates that are not even American, knew about that aspect of the bill. So why did Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose entire job is understanding what laws she is passing, why did she not know that that was in the bill that she was signing? These congressional members, they need to be held accountable for their actions. She just blatantly admitted that she had no idea that AI regulation was being taken away from the states and given solely to the federal government. And she said that if she had known, she would have voted no. And when the bill comes back to the House, because it's going to go back to the House after the Senate fiddles around with it, if it's still in there, she's going to vote no. So I guess the theme of this episode is people telling on themselves with tweets. Because again, that's just embarrassing behavior. That is like a fireable offense in any other job. If you came out and said, "Oh, the most important thing that I do for my job, I didn't do, and I went ahead and just stamped my name on the most important project we're going to be working on all year without even looking at it," you'd be fired if something like this showed up in the project. Some key difference that really goes against your foundational beliefs or your ethos or your company's whatever, you would be fired. Marjorie Taylor Greene needs to be fired. This is just horrific behavior. It's embarrassing. This is her entire job. I am a amateur podcaster, and I understood that this part of the bill was going to be a problem for states' rights Republicans. Why do I, an amateur podcaster, know more about this bill than she does? That's not okay. This is her whole job. This is the only thing she's supposed to be doing, is understanding what kind of laws she's passing. That is terrible. I cannot emphasize to you how terrible and embarrassing that is. And the worst part, I guess, is that if she didn't know that was in the bill, I guarantee you there were other congressional members that did not know that was in the bill. These people are signing bills without even reading them. So Donald Trump is complaining about Joe Biden signing things with AutoPen, and he didn't even know what was going on. His own party is doing the same thing. They do not know what's going on. How can these people possibly keep their jobs? How can they be allowed to continue ruining this country when they don't even understand what it is they're doing? They have such a basic flaw in their misunderstanding of how this country works. It's just infuriating. They are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to sit around and read laws and understand what it is that they're passing. They're supposed to understand them thoroughly so that they can debate them accurately and they can stick up for their constituents. That's the only thing they're supposed to do. That is their only freaking job. So, yes, I find that incredibly frustrating. I find it embarrassing, and I would find it extraordinarily embarrassing and infuriating if I was somebody who was tricked into voting for a moron like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Please, this is the last time I'm going to mention it this episode. Please get out there and vote. For the love of God, be informed and get out there and vote. I don't even care if you vote for the person that I want you to vote for. Just be informed about it and go make a logical choice. Thank you. Soapbox over. Oh, okay. All right. So I guess actually speaking of the whole uh President Trump is accusing Biden of auto penning things and having dementia, not knowing who he's pardoning, and yada, yada, yada. President Trump released a presidential memorandum directing an investigation into the Biden cover up. And I don't know if I have, I guess, made this clear yet or not, but I do want to go on record and say that this whole Biden cover up is truly heinous. I mean, it is horrific. I know I talk a lot about Trump because he's the big moron in chief right now and he's doing all the evil stuff in office right now. And that's what's important right now. But I get a lot of flack by Republicans saying, oh, you never talk about Biden, blah, 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 blah. Well, okay, first of all, it's just not relevant. It doesn't matter. It does not matter right now. But second of all, yes, that is horrific. They perpetuated a scam on the American people. It's embarrassing. There are plenty of books coming out about it right now that you can go read. And they talk at length about just how much people understood regarding Biden's declining cognitive functions. They knew he was not fit. They knew it, and they've known it for a long time. But they hid it from the American people because they wanted to cling into power and they wanted to, you know, I guess do what they thought was best for the country by trying to boost Biden up so that he could beat Trump again or whatever. But I guess the road to hell is always paved with good intentions. I've said that before, and I guess that's what happened here. That's the most charitable way of looking at things, that maybe they just understood that Donald Trump was even worse than a dementia-ridden Joe Biden. And yeah, I mean, yes, they're probably right. But it was still a horrific, terrible cover up to pull on the American people. It's embarrassing. And frankly, I'm not sure if anybody even can be brought to justice. I don't even know if they could be accused of any actual crime. I'm not sure. I don't think so. But I do hope that something comes from this because that was just wrong. But that aside, uh, Donald Trump has ordered an investigation into the Biden cover up and specifically into his use of AutoPen and whether or not that means that some of the things he did are actually legally binding. Like, for example, when Biden pardoned a bunch of people, Donald Trump is accusing him of using AutoPen with basically no evidence whatsoever and saying that maybe that means that these people aren't actually pardoned. First of all, this is kind of par for the course for Donald Trump. He just kind of accuses people of things with no evidence whatsoever. So I hope this isn't surprising to any of you. And I frankly hope you don't really take it all that seriously because, again, he's just kind of talking out of his butt. It's just like his favorite thing to do is just like come up with stuff. I mean, what, the other day he was tweeting about a Biden body double and how actually Biden has been replaced by a clone or a robot or something. And I asked a few MAGA people about it, and they all decided to say that it was probably just a joke or something. But that's some weird stuff to be truthing out. Regardless, the other aspect is that one of the, I guess, flaws in our Constitution is the fact that the founding fathers kind of overlooked the possibility of our rulers being just openly and outright corrupt. So if it turned out that for whatever reason, these pardons shouldn't have been done, or whatever. There is no mechanism in the Constitution for undoing that. There's just not. I mean, Donald Trump went and pardoned a bunch of January 6ers. I already talked about how a bunch of them have already committed some really horrible crimes or were, in prison for various horrible crimes or whatever. There's no way to undo it. The next president can't come in and say, you know what? Actually, these guys suck. Let's get them back. No, I mean, it's done. What's done is done. I don't think that Trump is doing anything here other than just trying to distract from the real stories as usual. But it's just disturbing to me that he's even pretending like anything could happen. And I guess I'll just mention this briefly here because I frankly haven't really looked into it a ton. But it was something that came across my feed recently that in New York, they're going to be doing a recount of a couple of districts. Some lawsuits won because there were some real strange discrepancies going on. I talked about some strange discrepancies in Iowa. But there were some lawsuits in New York, evidently, that passed through. They're going to be doing recounts, manual, by hand recounts, and they'll be reporting on whether or not these discrepancies bear out and show that there was actually fraudulent activity in the election. But to that end, in the Constitution, there's no mechanism for like undoing an election either. So as much as I talk about how, there should be some kind of proper investigation of the 2024 election if it turns out there was some, buffoonery going on or whatever, there's nothing to really do about it per se. I mean, Donald Trump could be impeached and then JD Vance would be president, who again benefited from, whatever cheating was going on. So okay, then you can impeach JD Vance, but then Mike Johnson is going to be president. The dude who's lying to you all the time and who also probably benefited from some kind of sneaky cheating or whatever, if Trump and Vance did too. So at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't investigate. I think you absolutely should. And I'm not saying you shouldn't impeach. I think you absolutely should. I think we should impeach Donald Trump right this second for things he's already done. Much less if it turns out he did actually steal the election like he was claiming Biden did. But I guess it's just food for thought, really. The Constitution was written by our founding fathers who had an enormous amount of faith in humanity and an enormous amount of faith in the population to not elect outright corrupt criminals. They were wrong. So I'm curious about your thoughts. Do you think there should be some mechanism added to the Constitution or just written into law to be able to undo either presidential decrees or elections or whatever? What do you think the answer is? I think it's a deeply complicated subject because obviously if there was a bunch of fraud in the election, you want it to be undone, but how do you even do that? You obviously wouldn't be able to just say, well, I guess Kamala Harris is the president now. That's not how it would work. So what do you think you should do? I'm curious. And what do you think about this investigation? Do you think that it is kind of tainted by Donald Trump talking so much about the 2020 election being stolen when it was proven many times over that it wasn't? Do you think that it's a bad look for our democracy that Democrats are harping on about the 2024 election maybe being stolen? Do you think they should just shut up about it and just kind of hold tight and just ride through this 4 years and hope they come back with a vengeance? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below because again, I think it's really nuanced. I'm really curious to hear your opinions because I'm frankly not sure. So speaking of executive orders, memorandums, et cetera, Donald Trump has also written an executive order that states that foreign students are no longer allowed to enroll at Harvard. So I talked about the kind of ongoing feud between Harvard and President Trump and, how the foreign students were kind of being told they weren't allowed to go to Harvard anymore. There was a lawsuit about it. That's still ongoing now. President Trump has now written this executive order saying no foreign students can go to Harvard whatsoever. and he is citing national security concerns. Well, this also kind of links back to the other topic I talked about right after I talked about the Harvard issue, which is the misuse of national intelligence, and how, if the president or the president by proxy through Tulsi Gabbard or whoever can tell the intelligence community, you need to rethink, wink, wink, some of your findings until you find exactly what I want you to find, then they can use that intelligence or that intelligence as a cause for doing anything. So let's say Tulsi Gabbard told the intelligence community, you need to write me up a report that talks about how Harvard is a national security concern because of links to the Chinese Communist Party or whatever. And they say no, and then they fire the people that say no until they finally get somebody who says, yeah, sure, yeah, okay, I'll write that report. Well, then the president can rely on that report and say, hey, it's not my call. Intelligence agencies are telling me they're a security concern. I got to do what I got to do. It's an emergency. It's a national emergency. It's just kind of, it's painting a very bleak picture. And it's one that they've been painting for a while, but the more they do this, the more obvious it becomes. And I hope you guys are seeing it too. They're coming up with these false premises. They're just saying basically whatever they kind of want to believe for whatever reason. And then they're deciding that that's the truth. And then they're hiring whoever will agree with them so that they can say, yeah, look, that guy says, what I was saying. It's just not a good look. It's actually a pretty frightening look, because where does this stop? Okay, right now they're doing it about Harvard. Okay, fine. What if they start doing it about whatever company you work for? What if they start doing it about whatever industry you work for? Or, whatever your alma mater is? Who is to say that they're going to stop with Harvard or with other elite universities? There really is no limitation to where this could end. So if you think it's not a big deal because Harvard is just some elite university and whatever, they can take it and they're not going to be that hurt by it, and it's not like Harvard is closing down anytime soon, think again. Because if it could happen to them, it could happen to you. I know it's unthinkable right now, but I promise you, 2 years ago, it was unthinkable that a president would ever say, Harvard is not allowed to have foreign students anymore. Unthinkable, truly. So, just food for thought. If it happens to somebody else, it can happen to you. And I guess that's actually perfect for the lead into my final segment here, because I want to talk about some of the stuff that's going on in California. First of all, just a spat that is between Governor Newsom and President Trump. Now, Governor Newsom and President Trump actually have a little bit of a history. Back when Biden was first considering stepping down, reports are that the only candidate that Trump was really concerned at all about was Newsom. He thinks that Newsom is a charismatic guy, a leader of men type, could be dangerous to him politically. So it's no surprise then that Newsom and Trump have gotten into a couple of sparring matches since Trump has retaken the presidency. And this recent one is about federal funding. See, Trump was kind of offhand mentioning that he was considering withholding funding from California for California universities, for, possible like FEMA aid, that sort of thing, in large part due to like purported issues of anti-Semitism or like California's stances on like transgender athletes and stuff like that. I'm not really going to get into that, but basically Trump was saying, hey, if you don't shape up and do what we want you to do, we can withhold federal funding. You're going to be broke and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, here's the thing. If California were its own country, separate from the United States, it would have like the third highest GDP in the world. California is a pretty big hitter economically. And so Governor Newsom said that if Trump wanted to do that, then he could withhold taxes that California ends up paying to basically other states and the federal government. California basically subsidizes many, many, many other states because of how much money they make. They have a lot of big spenders. Again, they have a huge GDP, or they would if they were their own country. Like, a lot of money runs through California. And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, they have the tech sectors, Silicon Valley, yada, yada, yada. Governor Newsom pointed out, rightfully so, that California actually sends out $80 billion more than they take in federal funding. So it's kind of unclear as to how that would even be possible, because taxes are taken out, at the time of the paycheck being given or at the time of the purchase being made. So it's not exactly clear how that money would actually be withheld. But it's kind of funny to me that Trump tried to, hold a big stick and be a big man and, intimidate California. And California said, no, because we're bigger. You can threaten to withhold money from us, but if we withhold money from you, it's going to be a bigger deal. And it's true. And it's kind of why I have an issue with a lot of these red states that are poor states, like Mississippi and Alabama and stuff like that. Those are the people who talk so strongly against things like welfare and food stamps, Medicaid, and stuff like that, when in reality, California is essentially providing welfare to those states, because those states don't pay out more money than they take in. They take in more money than they pay out. California is one of only a few states that actually does pay out more money than it takes in. And the other states are also, by the way, blue states. So it's just kind of, I guess, funny to me that in this case, Trump picked a fight he couldn't win. And that actually, now that I think about it, is kind of par for the course when it comes to essentially trade wars, economic wars. He tried to pick a fight with China, he chickened out. Now he tried to pick a fight with California, and he's going to chicken out. So, yeah, that's, I guess, the lighter news in California. But unfortunately, there is more news in California as well. ICE raids have been ramping up, especially in Los Angeles. And in response to these ICE raids, protesters have taken to the streets. I just want to preface this by saying that the LAPD has released a statement saying that this is a peaceful protest. Governor Newsom and the mayor of LA have both said they don't need any outside help. They don't need any federal help. They don't need any National Guard or anything like that. But unfortunately, the Trump administration has said that no, they are going to send in the National Guard, and actually, they might be sending in Marines as well. So these protests have escalated, unfortunately. I do know that a few people have gotten injured. I know that just recently a couple of motorcyclists ran into the police. I know the protesters / rioters have at least one car on fire. I'm not entirely sure that I would call these exactly peaceful protests, but I do agree that sending in the National Guard, and especially sending in the Marines, is a needless escalation. And I talked about this before when I talked about essentially Trump's, Boston Massacre, how he arrested the mayor of Newark in front of a large, angry crowd of people, and how I felt like they were kind of escalating on purpose. And how I had this horrible sinking feeling in my gut that they kind of wanted something bad to happen. And when I see that they're sending in the National Guard, even though the governor and the mayor both say they don't need it, and when I see that he wrote an executive order saying that the DOD can send in the military to combat any protests against functions of the government, it makes me feel like I was right. They do want something bad to happen. They're kind of chomping at the bit to enact martial law. I mean, why else would you have 500 Marines at the ready to send into LA, our own city? That just doesn't make any sense. Our troops should not be marching on our own people under any circumstances. And regardless of whether or not you think these protests are entirely peaceful or whatever, the First Amendment is the First Amendment for a reason. It is the most sacred and important aspect of our Constitution, and it is the single thing I think that makes America so great when you're talking about making America great again and being the greatest nation on earth. It's the freedom of speech. It's the fact that people are allowed to express their opinions even in loud and sometimes horrible ways. And now Trump is saying that protesters aren't allowed to wear masks anymore. That's just completely stomping on freedom of speech. And I know people seem to kind of misunderstand exactly how far freedom of speech stretches in America. And I'm telling you, it's probably further than you think. I mean, I know there's always this example thrown around of, oh, you can't shout fire in a crowded theater. But that's kind of funny because that example actually comes from a Supreme Court ruling where they said you can shout fire in a crowded theater. I mean, I don't think you should do that. I don't think that's a good thing, but the limits to speech are pretty specific. You have to be calling for imminent lawless action, and there has to be an expectation that it's going to happen, and it has to be a specific call to action. So you can't even, I mean, if you just said like, hey, somebody should do something illegal, that's not even enough. I mean, there are case studies in freedom of speech that have protected people from saying and doing really horrific, heinous, terrible things that I absolutely would not support, but I do support their ability to say them, even if I disagree really strongly, because I think that is what makes America great. The freedom to be able to express yourself without the fear of the government breathing down your neck, tracking you down, locking you away for having a dissenting opinion. I mean, what would you call that other than tyranny? What would you call that other than a dictatorship? And so these Marines that are potentially on call to march on American citizens, I cannot even fathom what is going through their heads right now. They took an oath, not to Donald Trump, not to Pete Hegseth, the leader of the DOD, not even strictly to their brothers and sisters in arms. They took an oath to defend the Constitution. To defend the Constitution from threats both foreign and domestic. And yes, that includes when the president is giving you an order to squash peaceful protesters and rob them of their First Amendment rights. So, to any service members listening right now, if there are any, I just encourage you to sincerely think about what your oath meant. It didn't mean you just have to blindly follow orders. We saw how that went. We've seen it throughout history. During the Nuremberg trials, you had people saying, I was just following orders. And it didn't work out well for them. Because the truth is, you're not just following orders, you're making a choice. Are you going to uphold the Constitution or not? So we're going to have to see how this situation develops in the following days. I hope the National Guard is able to be pulled out. I hope these protests die down peacefully. Right now, the Trump administration is moving fast and breaking things. That's what they've always wanted to do. And it's having a cost. We're seeing that now. I sincerely hope that we're able to find a peaceful resolution to all of this and a path forward to bridge this terrible divide growing in our country. Thank you so much for listening. It is always such a pleasure to have you. I am genuinely honored that you would take the time. Otherwise, don't forget that when you change your perspective, the reality changes. I'll see you soon.